Well, good morning. My name is James Wilmot, and a warm welcome to Forum Europe's 2021 Artificial Intelligence Conference, our third annual edition, in fact, this year, obviously held exclusively online. We have a fascinating program lined up for you all today, and we will shortly kick off with the keynote session, which will be expertly managed by Paul Adamson, Forum Europe's chairman. I'm going to be very brief, and I'm sure that many of you will have attended Forum Europe virtual events in the recent past, and therefore will likely be familiar with this platform that we're using today. But as I say, very brief reminder, there is a chat area on the right of your screen where you can, throughout the day, post your comments and your questions, and the moderators will be taking note of these and feeding them through as much as possible into the discussions. You'll also notice a variety of networking tools that are available to you. So I would encourage you all to, between sessions, if you have time, to give these a try. I also wanted to point you in the direction of the AI Research Hub, which we have on the platform today. You should be able to see that tab on the left of your screen. So please do take some time to have a look at the content that's available in the AI Research Hub, where we've gathered a range of R&D, research and development, academic presentations and content items, primarily focused on trust and ethics as it relates to AI, for you to view at your leisure. A big thank you to all the universities and researchers who have contributed to this initiative. All this content and replays of the sessions will be shared with you post-event also. Last but not least, thank you for being with us today. Thanks to our speakers for taking the time to prepare and contribute. It's very much appreciated. And thank you also to our AI 2021 conference sponsors, BSA, the Software Alliance, Microsoft, and SAP for their support during today's event. So with that, I will hand over the floor to Paul Adamson, Forum Europe's chairman, who will take things from here.
Thank you very much, James. And let me also extend my warm welcome to all of you. We have over 700 people registered for today's event. As we all know, the EU's artificial intelligence legislative proposals are due out next month and will attempt to further develop a European approach to application of AI that balances social economic innovation and ethical imperatives. Our conference today will focus on the following key areas: how to govern AI in an EU way through ecosystems of trust and excellence, and how this will fit with global AI governance. The state of play as to how emerging EU and member state rules will interact, whether there is now a danger of fragmentation and divergence within Europe. Developing common standards and definitions, particularly around conformity assessments and concepts of high-risk applications. The further development of data availability, sharing, and collaboration concepts alongside emerging cloud architectures and cooperation such as Gaia-X, and what they will mean for AI rollout in Europe. And for obvious reasons, this year's event will feature a significant focus on AI and its potential to deliver positive impacts in the area of health and disease prevention. And we look ahead to new rules on clarifying AI liability coming later in the year. We are going to kick off with a series of keynote addresses, starting with Thierry Breton, the Internal Market Commissioner at the European Commission, in some pre-recorded remarks. I give the floor to Thierry Breton.
Can you imagine a life without AI? A life where online shopping services do not suggest books to you, where streaming services don't propose movies tailored to your taste, where you don't find what you search online within seconds, and what is more, where we can't expect a COVID vaccine before 2030. AI is recognized as one of the most strategic technologies of the 21st century for a reason. It drives the digitalization of our economies, improves our lives, and will lead to a major boost in productivity. we want Europe to become a leader in AI. Our concept for leadership in AI is based on a twin objective: to promote the development and uptake of AI, and also to address the risk associated with certain use of this technology today and in the future. There are therefore two challenges we need to tackle to reach this goal. First, we need to increase investment in AI to match global competition, in particular from the US and China, while encouraging synergies and cooperation across all member states. Our recovery plan was 750 billion, targets at least 20% for digital priorities, of course, including AI. In addition, through the Horizon Europe and Digital Europe programs, we'll reach investments in AI of 20 billion euros per year. To achieve our second objective of trust in AI, we must get the rules of the game absolutely right. Firmly based on our European values, we need to address the risk linked to certain applications of AI, for example, facial recognition in public places, in the medical field, or decisions touching important personal interest, such as, for example, recruitment. Finally, reward on data and the potential of artificial intelligence as an enabler for the industry of tomorrow. AI technologies help optimize industrial process, make them more efficient and less resource intensive, enabling innovative self-learning and real-time solutions, from predictive maintenance to collaborative robots, from digital twins to augmented reality. Europe has many strengths to build on: great research centers, innovative startups, excellence in robotic and competitive industrial sectors, investment in a strong computing infrastructure and in cloud and processors, as well as making the most of large volumes of public and industrial data, will put definitely Europe in a position to be a global leader in AI ecosystem. We have already proposed a regulation on European data governance and will present a data act and proposals on health data spaces, for example. This will facilitate voluntary data sharing across the EU, with preserving control over the data from companies and individuals, among other goals. So I am counting on your support and contribution to this next step on Europe's journey during its digital decade. Thank you very much.
Okay, so we're now going to move on to the Carme Artigas, who's the Secretary of State for Digitalization and AI in Spain. Mr. Artigas, you're very welcome, and thank you for being with us. We're going to hear a few words from Ms. Artigas, and then we'll hopefully have a little bit of time for some questions following that. So, Minister, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. So good morning, all. It is a pleasure to participate in this third edition of this annual conference promoted by Forum Europe. I think it's time to discuss how technologies, and in particular AI, can support the recovery of our economies and societies, but also how this technology can improve our lives. In Spain, we have no doubt that digital transformation is a challenge today and for the years to come. And in that sense, the Recovery, Transformation and Resilience Plan is our national roadmap for the modernization of the Spanish economy. 30% of total European recovery funds will be devoted to enable the digital transformation of our country. And of course, artificial intelligence represents a fundamental element to achieve this robust, inclusive, and resilient economic recovery. AI can improve productivity up to 40% and increase our Spanish GDP by 11.5%. In particular, AI presents two types of benefits. On one hand, it will change the landscape of our existing industry to more and more data-driven industry. Also making more efficient and result-oriented markets and creating new opportunities, new products and services, and new business models. However, in order to generate and capture this value, we must face many challenges. And I would outline 4 important challenges I think are crucial in order to gain all the value of AI and be able to face their challenges. There are 4 important challenges: a technological challenge, an ethical challenge, a regulatory challenge, and a social challenge. Technological in the sense that we need a robust, auditable, and explainable AI. On the ethical side, we need to align the development of AI with our principles and values as a society. And I think that will make the difference between the different development we will see in one countries or continents to the others. Regulatory, we need to ensure a safe and trustworthy development and use of AI. And last but not least, a social challenge. We need to measure the impact of AI and clarify its governance involving the society on the limits we want to put to this technology. In Spain, we have a plan to achieve these opportunities and face these challenges. And this is Digital Spain 2025, our up-to-date agenda, which promotes the digital transformation of Spain. And it includes a vast amount of actions and goals, including supporting the development of a data economy and, of course, improving and empowering the development of artificial intelligence, with a goal to achieve that 25% of our companies, small, medium, and big, use AI and big data in year 2025. So in this context, Spain presented last December our national artificial intelligence strategy to create an environment of trust regarding the development of inclusive and sustainable AI that puts people at its heart in order to improve economic and social development. We are not only approaching the technological or development or academic research approach, we also aim to integrate AI into the value chain and ecosystems of our existing economy. The implementation of this strategy will mobilize an initial public investment of 600 million euros plus additional investment aiming up to 3,000 million euros between 21 and 23. Let me point that this strategy is intended to be responsive and flexible, agile. We don't expect any single strategy in AI that lasts more than 2 years. So by definition, we're going to iterate this national strategy every 2 years because we are facing a rapidly evolving technology, and I think we're going to face more challenges that we have not expected. We have 6 lines of action and concrete measures. 1, we would like Spain to become a hub for scientific excellence and innovation on AI. And we will provide a program to assist companies to incorporate AI solutions and data, and also an intensive program of research, development, and innovation, which are oriented with missions to address those challenges. Second, we want to integrate AI into the value chain to transform the existing economy. And in that sense, we have launched programs in the industry that are currently submitted. We have opened a call for interest to citizens and companies that is open until April the 2nd, so they can submit projects that help us identify these opportunities. We think AI should also be embraced by our administrations and our national strategic missions. For example, in order to be more probably personalized assistance to our citizens, reduce burden, and be much more efficient in the way we provision public services to citizens, and with a special focus with health, justice, and employment. We will also promote the creation of new jobs and talent around the required advanced AI skills in order to promote AI-related education and AI literacy amongst the population in general. An objective for which we will soon present, with the support of European Commission, the launch of the successful online course Elements of AI led by Finland that we have already adapted in Spanish and that will be launched this following month. Another line of action, of course, is around data and data platforms and technological infrastructure. Commissaire Breton has already pointed out the importance of data governance, and that Europe has its own sovereignty in terms of data collection and processing. And this is a very important issue. We are very determined to invest in the development of edge computing in advanced cloud computing, and also in quantum computing, and also in the creation of European data spaces that can be shared among different verticals, with a special focus on tourism and health. I think this is a very important issue that requires a common and coordinated action at a EU level, such as the Declaration on Data Gateways that the EU member states signed together last Friday during the Digital Day 2025. And last but not least, we must establish an ethical and regulatory framework that reinforces the protection of individual and collective rights in order to guarantee inclusion and social welfare. And to this end, we have promoted from Spain, we are promoting the first Charter of Digital Rights, an innovative and pioneering project that we are promoting also for discussion to the presidency, the European Commission, because I think this should be really a European declaration on digital rights. This Spanish vision and strategy is completely aligned with that of the European Union. As you know, EU is planning to propose legislation on AI soon, and some of the proposals we made are absolutely aligned with what we expect the legislation will come forward. As in our strategy, we see the importance of legislation to ensure that people trust in AI and that business adopt it, in particular when using high-risk AI applications. However, we believe that this legislation needs to be agile and smart so that it doesn't stifle innovation. In this regard, we have contributed to the European discussion on AI legislation and ethics, so AI becomes a truly human-centric, environmentally friendly, and inclusive technology. One thing I want to mention is that probably the most two important programs we are launching through our national strategy are the National Language Program on the use of Spanish language in AI, which I think we can lead internationally. Currently, AI is only developed in English, and we have the power of our language, and we want to lead that. And also a very interesting program, which is our national plan for green algorithms. And I think we cannot forget that AI is consuming a lot of energy. AI processing is consuming a lot of energy, and we want to focus on green algorithms by design, and also on the application of AI in a more sustainable energy consumption applications. Just to conclude, I want just to highlight that digital transformation and AI can make the world more productive, inclusive, and sustainable, bringing a lot of opportunities for new business creation and high-quality jobs. Our duty is to create the best conditions for technology to be used for the benefit of our society. The current context presents many challenges that we have to face with determination. To solve the future, we must embrace the present and work today in the challenges of tomorrow. We need a digital answer today to our problems of tomorrow, but this answer needs to be ethical and socially responsible. Let's continue working together. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Carmen. Thank you very much indeed. If you have time, I'd like to ask you a couple of questions briefly. You talked about the human-centric perspective of AI, but how can you talked about the problem of trust in society and the Charter for Digital Rights, so you think should be not just a national Spanish initiative, but also a European one. So how can we improve societal perception and trust in AI technology?
Yes, I think that it's important that we give trust and protection to people. And we believe that the rights and freedoms that we as citizens enjoy in our current offline world should be equally protected in the online world. It's not a question of defining new fundamental rights. We are in democracies, but mostly to revisit those rights in the new digital environment. What is, for example, freedom from speech in the digital world? How is equality described in the digital world? How is right to intimacy described in the digital world? So we must create this environment of trust between the population to guarantee that AI is accessible. But we are also going a little bit beyond, and we are proposing new rights that are as a consequence of these new technologies. For example, in this Charter of Digital Rights of Spain, we are proposing rights around AI, so the right not to be discriminated by an algorithm, or rights around neurotechnologies as a right not to be augmented artificially, or not to be read, to have our minds read, our brain waves, for example, not that we own our brain waves on our minds. So it's something that sounds very, very challenging and very future-looking, but they are realities, and probably we need to be able today to establish the limits of all these technologies. So I think this really it can be the European way of developing AI, this human-centric approach. And I think that should be our differentiation factor in the way Europe is developing AI with comparison of how US or China is developing AI.
Another quick question before I let you go back to your day job, Carmen. You set out in great detail Spain's national AI strategy. What other digital plans do you have in Spain coming forward? And maybe was the EU Recovery Fund going to be instrumental in making some of this happen?
Absolutely. We are, I think, the number one country devoting more percentage of these recovery funds to digital transformation. There's a 33% of our about 70,000 million euros that we are getting from the recovery fund, together with a 36% devoted to ecological transition. So these are the two leverages where we want to build a new sustainable economy. But of course, AI is on the top of the value pyramid. We need to have a good infrastructure and connectivity. Spain has it already, although we are pushing a lot for broader connectivity and 5G deployment in the following 3 to 5 years. But on top of that, we need to build another infrastructure. And the most important infrastructure we must build in Spain is talent. And probably the most important program I would like to highlight together with the AI strategy is our national plan for digital skills. We lack on basic digital skills in Spain, and also on having access to advanced knowledge and advanced specialists. And that's one to cover. And these 3 key plans for me are very important: the national digital skills plans, also the digitalization of small and medium businesses, and also the modernization and digitalization of our public administration. Altogether, they are endowed with an investment of 11 billion euros of public money, and also co-funded by the European Recovery Fund.
Well, thank you very much indeed for your time, Carmen. We'll let you go back to your work, and thank you very much for your time. Have a good day.
Thank you to you, and enjoy the conference.
Thank you very much. And now we're going to move on to hear from Dragos Tudorakis, MEP, who, as you all know, I'm sure by now, is the chair of this special committee on artificial intelligence in the digital age. And this is an intervention and an interview we recorded yesterday. So I give the floor to Dragos.
Well, thank you very much, Paul, and thanks a lot to Forum Europe for organizing this event. And I want to apologize at the start for not being able to be live with you, no matter the importance of the conference and how dear the topic is to me, to my heart. But as you speak, I need to be also speaking in the plenary, where we are discussing something that is actually quite relevant for today's conversation, which is the European data strategy, which is being debated in the plenary. Where are we on AI? And this is a particularly interesting moment in time, because we are only few days or few weeks, depending on how you want to count it, away from the moment when the Commission will put forward its proposal on the AI, a long-awaited proposal, something that was announced as those that are more savvy to the European processes. It was announced for the first 100 days by President von der Leyen in her inaugural speech. Then, and I would say, thankfully, the Commission has decided to take its time, also because here in Parliament, I think the signal from all the political groups was that it is important to go through a process of better understanding, in fact, the context in which we will regulate, and also to get more feedback, more information from the stakeholders, from those impacted by the regulation that we will negotiate before regulating. And there were a few elements which I think still stand true today, which was the fact that you cannot come with a blanket regulation, with a one-size-fits-all approach, that we need a differentiation. And I think then afterwards, with the white paper, the Commission has gone further into explaining how it wants to address that by a risk-based approach. And of course, based on the consultation launch with the white paper and the valuable contributions that were made by absolutely all walks of life and representatives of everything from academia to organizations of citizens, civil society, businesses, governments, so on and so forth. I think now the Commission is sitting on a very rich pile of information that they can use to actually put forward a good proposal. Of course, we can't anticipate. We hear signals. We can guess what is going to feature in this proposal, but we won't know for sure until a few weeks from now. But if I can maybe stay a bit on what I have retained as part of the work that we have also done with our Special Committee on Artificial Intelligence, AIDA, here in Parliament, a committee which I chair, what we retained as being the main conversations, in a way, around AI, irrespective of what seems to be the focus of the discussion, whether it is about the impact on the Green Deal, whether it's about the impact on health, whether it's about the impact on competitiveness or on foreign affairs. Somewhat, there are few elements which seem to develop into a common red thread that goes through these conversations, and I'll enumerate a few of them, which again, for me, I have seen them as the most prominent. I think for one part of the conversation, the elements which are very important is first that somewhat when, and I have said it in other occasions, when we are going to create the boundaries for this new technology, we need to make sure that we are doing it with a society in mind which is at least as fair as the one today, the physical one today, if not fairer, if we can. What I mean with that is that, again, no matter what the conversation topic is, if it is about AI, people are concerned about biases and discrimination. And this has to remain a very central focus of the work that we will do as legislators when we're going to set up the rules of the game. So again, how to make sure that we're not transposing in this technology and the way it's going to impact our lives and our societies, again, that we're not carrying over the biases, the discriminations, and that goes from social and economical background all the way to gender or sexual orientation, basically any form of discrimination from today in all processes, whether it's recruitment or whether it's assessing the risk for picking up insurance or a credit in the bank. So no matter what the context is, if the decisions are based on algorithms that are creating a profile for someone, then again, it should be free of biases and discrimination. That's an important piece. A second very important element is, again, how to define these risks and how to regulate in a way that does not go too far in hampering innovation, in hampering economic growth, and hampering startups and scale-ups to reap the benefits of this new technology. So how to make sure that the rules and the standards that we put in place do not unnecessarily create burdens there where those burdens don't have to be, while at the same time, of course, achieving our interest of putting the right boundaries around those that are creating high risk. So this is going to be one of the great elements of finesse in how the Commission is going to put forward its proposal, to make sure that it actually manages to capture these different categories of risks in a way that, again, does not hamper what remains a key objective. And I think, and I stress this, it has to remain a key objective for all of us regulators trying to create these new standards, which is that this technology continues to produce benefits for our economies, benefits for our citizens, benefits for our societies, because again, like any technology, it is meant to do that, again, if we use it in a proper way. Then a third element that comes in these conversations is the impact that artificial intelligence has on areas that maybe are not that evident to initially when we look at a tool, at a technological tool. Which of course can always be used for good, for bad, and therefore you have to put some boundaries around it. But there is a growing recognition that with artificial intelligence, there is a much deeper effect. It goes into the fabric of our democracies. By the way, it can accelerate certain processes which are impacting our democracies. And I refer to disinformation, to fake news, to possible influences on electoral processes. So everything that makes today's democracy and political life what it is, particularly with a growing impact of social media and new forms of interaction between individuals, between electors and political and public life. And again, artificial intelligence can be an accelerator for phenomena that are having a deep, profound effect on how our democratic lives are going to take place. And therefore, again, there is a very serious and I think legitimate concern that we understand all of these effects and that, again, we can put the rules in place to cater for that. Then there are concerns on the side of the businesses, again, legitimate concerns as well. And that has to do with how we will be defining the rules related to the data sets that will be used to feed the algorithms. And there are arguments that say, listen, we don't have to have too many rules. We take the data as we have it, because that's the whole advantage of putting out data to economic use. And then you have others who say, well, fine, but then again, if we take the data as it is, it may not help the algorithms to actually produce the outcomes that we want, particularly if we set some principles, and I go back to what I was saying related to discrimination, fairness, so on and so forth. So again, how we will be regulating and how the Commission is going to put forward the rules for the conditions in which these data sets will be produced and used for the algorithms of artificial intelligence is an important conversation. And last but not least, it's the effects on our educations, on the skills, on the jobs of today, as well as the impact on the jobs and the skills of tomorrow. So in other words, how do we make sure this transformation that AI is going to produce in our economies and society is not leaving people behind and is not creating this sort of a reservation effect in our populations that will actually discourage uptake of any products or applications that are based on AI, which is a risk that we have to very seriously take into account. The whole success that we want to achieve with artificial intelligence as a driver for various processes in our economies and our societies can only work, again, if there is trust. And if our citizens are actually trusting those applications, they are trusting the technology at their very core. So again, it is therefore essential that we, in the way we design these technologies, in the way we let it roll out, that we do not leave the impression that we are ignoring, that we are leaving people behind, that we don't cater for their legitimate concerns, also when it comes to the impact on the labor markets, to the impact on the skills that people need to have, the adaptation of their competencies. And here, of course, we have to think very seriously at how we adapt our education system so that we prepare already the children of today to have the competences that they need for the jobs of 10 years from now, 20 years from now, that will be very much influenced by how AI will evolve. And at the same time, address those that are already right now on the labor market, and how do we adapt their skills, how do we adapt their competences, their professional training in a way that they can actually stay up to date with the evolution in the labor markets, and that they can actually do that switch from whatever it is that they do today in adapting to the jobs of tomorrow. And here, there's something I always say, of course, there will be jobs that will disappear as a result of AI. Just as there were jobs that disappeared whenever a technological revolution took place. But every time such a revolution took place, there were new jobs that appeared. The key is to make sure that you again, drag your society with you. You in the positive sense, right? That you take on all your social economic categories, and that you make sure that you provide the conditions for them to stay with you, to stay adapted to those transformations so they can actually benefit themselves also from it, and therefore not create that effect of reservation that I was that I was mentioning earlier. So these are, of course, there are many other details, and happy to go through some of them in the few questions that we can go through. But these are some of the key topics of conversation that I have picked up in our work here in Parliament. And of course, once the proposal will come forward, we'll be starting very quickly the negotiations of that, and then the discussion will evolve. And for maybe one last minute, I will mention that we cannot regard only this proposal in isolation. In fact, we have to look at the entire trail of legislative proposals that were put forward by the Commission since last year, starting with the Data Governance Act and the DSA, the DMA. So all of these other pieces of the puzzle, when it comes to also how data is governed, managed, put at the disposal of companies, of entrepreneurs, of any entity that wants to make use of it, the conditions in which that happens. Then if we speak of DSA, the responsibility of existing digital platforms in the way they manage the content on there. So all of these are in fact connected. They are connected into this sort of a new landscape of EU's digital ambition and digital agenda, and they all cross-feed each other. So I think the essential thing also for us, Parliament, when looking when working, in parallel on all of these pieces of legislation, is to make sure that we don't disconnect, and that whatever we will be thinking in terms of what is important for the conditions of creating data sets, for example, for artificial intelligence, is linked to the conversations that we're going to have in how we govern data, whether public or private, in the context of negotiating the Digital Governance Act, for example, or how platforms are and their responsibilities and obligations are being dealt with when negotiating the DSA, or how we govern the big tech giants when speaking of DMA, so on and so forth. So I think, again, as regulators, we also have this duty of coherence in the approaches that we will take in negotiating this legislation, so that at the very end, we actually end up with a package with a new regulatory framework for our digital lives and economies that not only makes sense, but actually it fulfills that obligation, that objective of creating the digital single market that we all talk about, that we bring down barriers that we all talk about. But if we look, unfortunately, I would say, a bit into the past, we see that sometimes, although with good intentions, we have actually contributed to fragmentation rather than to coherence through some of the proposals that came out of the EU bubble. And I think that now we have this duty of care as politicians, as regulators, to avoid that, that we actually produce more fragmentation than coherence. So I'll stop here. Paul, thanks a lot for bearing with me, and I'm in your hands.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dragos. We have time for a couple of quick questions. My first question is actually about process. The special committee which you chair has an initial mandate, I understand, of 12 months, and we're already 12 months in, 6 months into that 12-month lifespan. And you say also time is of the essence. Do you intend to put down your tools at the end of this 12 months, or will you want to carry on? Because you also presumably want, as you hinted in your opening remarks, bring in as many experts and stakeholders and listen to their point of views as possible. So how are you going to try to combine those two tensions? The time span of the committee and making sure everybody's voice is listened to.
So maybe a piece of news on the duration of the mandate. I think that is important for everyone to know. The plenary, the last Parliament plenary, approved the extension of our mandate with 6 months, which is a request that we made in February. So right now the mandate spans all the way to March 2022. Okay. And then we will see whether there is still need to request an extension even further. In a way, we started late with this. It's good that this special committee exists. It is an important, I think, manifestation of the way Parliament regards artificial intelligence and its political importance. But because it started in September, we already knew from the outset that we will not be in time with our report before the Commission's announced proposal on AI. So what we have tried to do in the Commission is to actually create the opportunity for as much conversation on important topics related to AI. And I think that through our hearings, through our workshops, we've brought around important topics, experts, policymakers from the member state level, from various international organizations, also strengthening this idea of multilateralism in how we govern and regulate AI, in order to feed as much input as we could to the Commission in its effort to look at a very complete picture before making the proposal. But at the same time, we are very, one piece of our mandate that we hold very dear in AIDA is the fact that we are actually told by our mandate to look into the future. And to look into the impact of artificial intelligence on all walks of life, all pieces of industry, of economy, all domains possible, and look with the perspective of where we're going to be and what the impact is going to be in 10 years' time or more. And we take this sort of anticipatory, I would dare say, with some humility, visionary approach very seriously. So we are going to use the duration of the mandate we have to actually work very seriously on the report, and then come at the end with a report that is going to capture the moment at the same time as looking into the future and outlining a bit, signposting a bit what the evolution of our own policies and legislation should be. Because let's be very clear, this piece of legislation that is going to come is only the first one. Another element that was very evident from the way the Commission has prepared it is the understanding that there will be a staged process. We are regulating now what is essential, what we can actually capture right now with what we know. We will see also the effects of this legislation, how it actually impacts various domains in the economy, and then later on we could go even further once we have understood the effects, we have seen the effects, we have rolled out these sort of regulatory framework in a first stage. So the work of the committee in that respect and the report at the end of the committee remains, I think, very relevant.
And a final question, Dragos. You're clearly very optimistic in terms of Europe having its role to play in AI and not being left behind, unlike many of the pessimists who think it's too late. You acknowledge, you said in the past, that we are behind in investment, quite largely, big time behind in investment, but it's not too late to bridge that gap. Why do you still have this optimism that Europe can be a leader in AI?
Well, first of all, I think I have a duty as a politician to remain optimist. I think that if we let ourselves be carried over by pessimism, then no one will push. But beyond that, I do feel that over the last 2 years, there's what I call an awakening. I think there were pioneers here and there, also in the last political cycle in Brussels and also in the member states, that were picking up the signals. But they were just that. They were pioneers. And I don't think that even as pioneers, they were sufficiently networked so that they would actually have that sufficient critical mass to actually push things at a political level. And I think this is a fundamental shift that has taken place over the last 2 years. From the very moment when the Commission has put forward its priorities by putting the digital up there, and of course behind it there was important political work at the level of our political leadership that has actually influenced that agenda. And then everything that has happened with what the Commission has done, with what the European Parliament is doing, with what national parliaments are doing. By the way, there are national parliaments who are going through the same processes that we do here. Governments who are stepping up and adopting strategies, taking common positions on what the future of artificial intelligence should be. All of this 2 or 3 years ago, didn't exist. There were specialists who were discussing about the impact of AI and what needs to be done. But that sort of a critical mass of politicians, of regulators, realizing, first of all, the inevitability, in a way, of this transformation, and then how we need to gear up to face it, I think that's something that gives me optimism. Are we there yet? Of course not. We're not yet there in terms of how much money we spend. We're not there yet in terms of how we're actually preparing our societies and our economies for that. We still need to work on it, but we are taking the necessary steps to get there. It's going to take a few years, for sure. But again, I think the ingredients are now there. it is up to us to work with these ingredients and prepare the right product. And I'm optimist that we can actually do it.
Okay, you've been very generous with your time, Dragos. Thank you very much, and have a good day.
Thank you, and have a very good debate onwards. Thank you.
Thank you, Dragos. Right, so that was recorded yesterday, so we're now back in real time. And our final keynote intervention this morning is from Isidro Lazo Ballesteros, as you all know, is a senior member of the cabinet of Commissioner Maria Gabriel at the European Commission. Isidro, you have the floor.
Hello, thank you, Paul, for the invitation. Thank you, Forum Europe, for inviting the Commissioner Gabriel. She can unfortunately not be here with you today, but she certainly has a strong message to pass in this in the regards of artificial intelligence. And our focus is not going to be on the area of regulation, or is not going to be on the area of the ethical aspect that, of course, we are considering. My address today is going to be focused on the artificial intelligence ecosystem in Europe. And for the ecosystem, we need to have the artificial intelligence research. And for this, Commissioner Gabriel is in charge of Horizon Europe, that has been mentioned also by Commissioner Breton, and also the Digital Education Action Plan, that has been also mentioned by the Secretary of State, Artigas, on her intervention about the importance of skills on this. On the area of, still in the area of artificial intelligence research, we have also very promising networks of excellence of artificial intelligence like CLAIRE or ELIS that are emerging. To have the ecosystem, we also need to have talent. We need to have talented people, no, that provide the right skills. And this is actually the main problem nowadays for artificial intelligence in Europe. It's not access to capital, it's access to talent. And in the access to talent, the Digital Education Action Plan is very much focused on developing first, bringing artificial intelligence capabilities and applications to the schools, and also in the universities to help the graduates and the students to have the right skills needed by the startups in artificial intelligence, the startups and the traditional companies as well that are moving into artificial intelligence. And the third part, research, talent. The third part is who is innovating nowadays in Europe, and these are the startups, the big startups, the scale-ups, the unicorns. So here we are very good in the area of artificial intelligence, and I will here enter a new dimension that is a deep tech. For me, artificial intelligence is just the beginning of what is deep tech. And the deep tech is what is going to be the really promising thing for the future, and where Europe can certainly lead. In the area of deep tech, we have startups like unicorns already, like UiPath in artificial intelligence, but also Lilium with flying taxis, or Celerus with a Hyperloop. So we are leading on this area of deep tech. And the Commissioner Gabriel is going to have next Tuesday the first meeting with 33 unicorns in Europe, at least one per country. So that's why there are some quasi-unicorns. They are not yet unicorns because we don't have unicorns yet in all the countries. But we are going to have this meeting with the 33 unicorns next Tuesday. And then on the 16th of April, she's going to have another meeting with the 27 ecosystem leaders, one per country. Our idea is to start reflecting with the community about a new European innovation policy. What is called, the working title we are using is Next Innovation EU Policy. And the focus there will be very much on deep tech. We realize that we have all that is needed to live on this new wave of innovation. When we look at the traditional Silicon Valley style startups, we only have a 7.2% of all the unicorns in EU 27 once the UK has left. And the US and the China, they have around 40%, a bit more each. So we have a long way to go there. However, in the area of deep tech, we are already leading in the area of startups in this domain. And this is also is much more linked to science, where Europe is by far the #1 leader. In terms of scientific publications, Europe is first, second is China, and third is the US. The deep tech startups are based on not easy to replicate algorithms and based on protected IP. So we want to lead on this. We want to move from the 140 characters, the Twitter, to flying taxis and Hyperloop. And we want to focus within deep tech, not only artificial intelligence is the first thing, but we want to focus also on the new materials, on the space tech by startups, and on synthetic biology. And I will put the focus here also in synthetic biology, because this will bring huge opportunities for Europe. We are certainly leading here, and will bring a lot of challenges in terms of regulation and ethical aspects. For example, we were the other day in the Parliament and the Commissioner talking about this. The challenges for the regulators brought by synthetic biology, because they are developing living and non-living organisms in a way that is really difficult to separate. We are thinking, our way of thinking is between the living and the non-living world, and synthetic biology breaks these borders. No, so we are doing a lot of work, as you see, on working on this next innovation EU policy with the ecosystem leaders, the unicorns, and with the whole community, and a lot with the European Parliament as well. And this is what I wanted to call the attention, that the artificial intelligence should be considered only as a kind of a test bed of what is going to come on deep tech. And the regulation, ethics, ecosystem activities in research, startups, etc., talent, education could be tested in artificial intelligence, but with a vision to go into what will come next, that is deep tech, so that the policymakers, we are not lagging behind, like in the case of artificial intelligence, but we are already at the forefront preparing for what things are still to become.
I think I'm right in saying, Isidro, in a previous life, you were also an entrepreneur and innovator involved in many tech startups. So I'm intrigued by these meetings that you're planning with your commissioner in the coming weeks, the 33 unicorns next week and the wider ecosystem community in mid-April. Do you think the policymakers and the startup innovators speak the same language? Do you think you'll be able to have a real connection? And maybe that's your role, to connect the two groups.
Yeah. That's certainly one of my main roles, to connect. Sorry, one moment. Sorry, this is the problems of the direct. No, when this recorded, we don't have those internet problems. So I was, yeah, certainly we have a big challenge here, and I am participating in many meetings with member states for the national recovery plans, and surprise, the wording you never use here there is startups, scale-ups, unicorns. It's always about the big companies, the industrial companies, and the traditional world. And of course, we need to take care of them, but I think we should take opportunity of the national recovery funds plans for working with startups and scale-ups. And this needs to be done at national member states. Surprisingly, in Poland was the only meeting that they attended, organized by the government, where the focus was in this topic. And this is certainly, as you said, part of my role in the European Commission and in the cabinet, Gabriel, certainly, to build bridges and to open the eyes to my colleagues in the other cabinets as well, that there is wall beyond the big companies and the universities. There is a new world of startups. So yeah.
Okay. Well, another question to you, Isidro. You heard from Carme in her intervention about their action plan in AI, but I also, in my introduction, talked about the potential maybe for fragmentation if too many member states, especially large member states like Spain and France and Germany and elsewhere, start having their own action plans. Is that something which is helpful for you and Commissioner Gabriel, or is it actually a potential problem down the line?
Well, I had to say, I mean, I be inclined to think like you, no, but I had to see that I am really happily, I will not say surprised, maybe I should not say surprised, but is the fact is that we are working very closely. They know very well in which line we are going, and we are checking, and they consult with us before making anything public to see that it's in line. As Secretary of State Artigas mentioned before, she has consulted that the national artificial intelligence plan is in line with what the legislation we are preparing. So I had to say I'm not worried there. There has been a few cases where we have seen some difference of interpretations, but we are working very closely together. So I have to say the Council, the Member States and the Commission are really working smoothly, and a lot of trust and confidence in one another on ensuring that there are no contradictions.
Right.
So no problems here, I think.
And a final question, Isidro, if I may, before I let you go. You talked at the beginning about the need for this ecosystem in Europe, and it's not just a question of ecosystem in terms of different stakeholders and players in this field, but also almost like a policy ecosystem. And you specified in particular, of course, two key elements of Commissioner Gabriel's portfolio: Horizon Europe and the Digital Education Action Plan. Looking forward at the end of this current mandate of the van der Leyen Commission and Mr. Gabriel's mandate, what do you think? How do you expect, and what are your expectations of how these instruments like Horizon Europe and the Digital Education Action Plan will enhance and support this move, as you say, into the deep tech program?
Yeah, well, this is the Commissioner, Gabriel, is very committed to have this next innovation EU policy as her legacy. Next innovation EU policy that will bring together all the programs, but here the most important thing is not the programs, it's more the leadership and the political things that can be done, because the financial capacity of the EU is very limited when we compare with all the member states together and also with the private sector in deep tech. So we have to be very realistic about this. We want that the program that we have, particularly the leadership of the Commission, for example, with these 33 unicorns, they have a valuation between them of almost 300 billion euros. It's more than 3 times the total budget of Horizon Europe for 7 years. So, if we are able to mobilize all these people, and these people they are all still private companies, so they are owned by the founders, by the people that will be in the meeting there. We need to move all these resources into tackling. In the next Innovation EU policy, there will be 4 directions. We are working 4 directions. We are taking a directionality approach. The first direction is, of course, how innovation, I'm talking here about innovation, not about basic research. Innovation will help to reach the objectives of the green transition. This will be the first direction. The second direction is how this will help the innovation policy can help us to implement the objectives of the digital decade. The third one, this is very important and is relatively new, about innovation cohesion. Territorial cohesion across the member states and within the member states between urban and rural areas. And the fourth direction, and this is the one I wanted to put the focus today because of the topic, was on the leadership in deep tech. So we want to bring not only the programs, because I said, I come from the private sector. Again, I created 2 companies myself, and I know that the public money is always limited, and it's always very difficult to get, bureaucracy, etc. Normally, you try not to never go there, but what we need is to mobilize everybody else, all the private sectors, all the member states, and sometimes they are more agile, so the regions. We also have to provide leadership so that the society, the stock exchanges in Europe, for example, are more welcoming to the startups. I have heard that the 10, 12 of these unicorns might go during this year or next year to go to a stock exchange in the US. Because here in Europe, the valuation that is given to them is half the valuation in the US, of course. Who is going to stay here if they are promising you double the value, no? So we need to also create awareness among the society that this is the way to go. That of course there are risks, but no more than in other areas. And this is where the next Innovation EU policy we want to move Europe, and this is the legacy that the Commissioner wants to bring beyond any particular funding program that of course they are needed. More this kind of leadership on positioning the EU as the next innovator.
Okay, thank you very much, Isidro. This is absolutely fascinating, but we have to move on. We'll have to have you back soon to carry on this conversation. Thank you very much, Isidro.
Thank you, Paul, for the invitation. Take care. Enjoy.
Thank you, Isidro. So those of you watching might have noticed we're slightly behind schedule. I hope you will forgive us for that. And now don't go anywhere. We're going to move to our first panel of today's conference on trust, excellence, and the governance of AI. Thank you, and stay tuned.